to the Real Estate Entrepreneurs Podcast.
Welcome to the Real Estate Entrepreneurs Podcast. Today, we have Mr. Benmont Locker.
What's going on, Ricardo?
Hey, Benmont. Do you go by Ben or do you go by Benmont?
You know, man, we could do a whole podcast probably on that. I was 34 years old, and somebody's like, well, you have to pick. It's your name. And I was like, well, how does Robert and Bob get through their whole life where they're not offended?
Exactly.
And so I answered and I said, all right, fine, Benmont. And they were like, see, you care. And I was like, I didn't care. You told me to pick. So I don't care. And it's either Ben or Benmont is fine. And we'll leave it at that today. So I will respond to whatever you call me.
Benmont is fine, man. I like to call people by their names. But, you know, sometimes you run into a Bob and he likes to be called Bob, not Robert. So,
yep.
Anyhow, this podcast is about your journey, right, into this beautiful world of real estate. Where are you from? Where do you come from? Can you tell me a little bit about your upbringings?
Yeah, so from a non-exciting small town in Pennsylvania, the only reason you'd heard of it is history class. I grew up in Gettysburg. Renowned for our Civil War era there. Spent the majority of my schooling there, grew up there, bounced around the local central Pennsylvania area, Harrisburg, York, and just kind of was always home to there. However, I've gotten a jump on early retirement, and I came down to Florida now, and I'm a true Tampa Bay Tampanian, as they say. I live in the area now, so I traded in the mid Atlantic and came down here to Florida.
Do you buy subject twos?
Depends. We buy anything if it's the right deal.
I got one in Clearwater right now.
I would love to take a look at it. Wouldn't that be an amazing introduction to a podcast? Hey man, I got a deal for you.
Hey, you know what? Hey, that's sometimes how we do deals, right? It's like, hey, here it is. I got a deal for you, so why not, right? I buy deals too all the time. I had a friend of mine that called me out of the blue yesterday. He's like, hey man, can you help me dispo this deal? And I'm like, because we're really good at this point. And I went in there and I looked at it and I said, I might not dispo this. I might just take it from you. So, why not? So, all right. So you're now in Tampa. How long have you been in Tampa for?
Just, it'll be 2 years in another couple of months. So I'm new. I'm the new guy. One of the 40,000 a day that have relocated to Florida.
I love Tampa. My daughter lives over there. For some reason, my wife doesn't want to move to Tampa, but it's up to me, I'll live there right now.
It's not.
No, it's not. It's up to my wife. So that's the reality, right?
Exactly.
But now let's go back. You graduated high school. What do you do after that?
Yeah, I actually had no idea what I wanted to do after high school, and I thought. Dentistry was a cool field. I was like, hey, they don't do much. They, check out my teeth and get paid a reasonable wage for that. So I went to Temple University for pre-med and was going to pursue that path. And it didn't take long before I realized that absolutely wasn't in alignment with what I wanted my days to look like. My dad was very entrepreneurial, was just independent sales rep at the time. Not knowing much about like my personality and applying it to real world after school. I was like, oh, I'll go do this with him for a little while, and quickly learned that sales was not my forte and that I was a little bit nerdier than that. So him and I cultivated this really cool relationship of like sales and ops. And that was really the launch pad for my career after some abuse, trying to pretend I was great at being a sales guy.
What were you guys selling?
We actually in the hunting, the ski and outdoor, and then hunting and fishing industries.
Okay.
At the time, and we actually, being right entrepreneurial and operational, I was like, hey man, like let's stop selling this stuff and let's find a better way to do it. And this is, we age ourselves, right? But like the internet was still a booming opportunity, and I was like, let's get into the e-com space out of brick and mortar retail. And we eventually built a website, started buying discount goods and selling them. And my plan didn't work as quick as I wanted. So we actually jumped into the retail space, and we ended up scaling and opening 19 stores in 9 states in about 24 months. And then a private equity group came along and they wanted to buy the project out from under us. So we went from start to conception and worked really, really hard to being able to exit that. And then I was 23 and I was like, oh man, now I got to figure out what to do now. This was supposed to be my future here. And then I stayed on with the PE group, learned a lot about digital marketing, advertising, and found myself right back in the same role where I actually got plugged in. Guy was a vicious entrepreneur, and I had a room full of programmers, and he would come in and just yell at these poor people, right? Very emotional. Probably could use some leadership lessons, but highly successful guy. And I was like, hey man, like you can't do that. Like my lead developer has Asperger's over here, and the guy like is melting down. So I was like, Josh, you just talk to me, and then I will go talk to them. Hence, like, right, this back to this operational position. And throughout the rest of my career, I learned that kind of is that visionary integrator style relationship. And I've always done things from that point in my formal career of like from a very objective operational perspective of how to systematize, stabilize, and scale businesses. So bounced around a little bit after that. Was in spine implant industry, alcohol, health supplements. So it kind of became like agnostic of the commodity, and everything was about how do we take these good ideas, how do we systematize them, how do we do more of it, how do we get rid of the bad, and then get bigger and grow from there. Which led me to a big multifamily real estate deal that kicked off my journey in real estate about 6 or 7 years ago. So I haven't been in it super long.
Well, so you're fairly new.
Yeah, I'm a newbie. So yeah, you
And
can learn a lot quick.
let's go back to scaling the stores that you guys had, right?
Yeah.
At what point did you guys decide, okay, I'm gonna go scale to 3 stores now? Or what was that thinking process? Because you went pretty fast in 24 months. You almost like open up a store every 2 months.
Yep. It was it was one after the other. So our launch plan was like, as soon as this one's done, the research team was trying to find where we were going to go next. And we were like a bouncing rodeo that just went stop to stop to stop. It was the tour band without the fans, suppose, of, vicious work. But to answer your question, scale was, there was 2 things, frankly, and vulnerably. One was that we just bought too much inventory. So when good deals arose, what we built, our vision and mission was to build TJ Maxx for the outdoor enthusiast.
Right.
So all brand name goods, discounted prices. And to do that, we really had to kind of show up with some buying power to capitalize on those deals. It was like if somebody had a portfolio at a discounted rate and you wanted one, and you were like, oh shit, the only way to get here is to buy the portfolio, I'm going to do it. So we bought the goods. And then we just didn't have the disposition channel big enough to support the input of goods. So we quickly said, hey, cool, like let's start to systematize this. And then over time, we were like, now we can fill our pipeline and start manufacturing goods. So we'll create our own discount buys by building brands and building special SKUs and bringing them in. So there was a pivotal switch there. In the beginning, it was like survival mode and let's keep adding doors so we can keep selling stuff because we bought too much of it. And then it kind of transitioned to a little bit more positive of an experience.
Wow. So now the first few stores, were they all in one city, or you started just going to multiple cities right away?
Yeah, they were pretty localized. The first store ever, man, when somebody said, hey, like you're on a podcast, hopefully you're credible and trustworthy, was about a 2,000 square foot store in a dated strip mall in the middle of a small town in central Pennsylvania. But the proof of concept was really good, and the feedback helped us define who our avatar and who our clientele was. So the very second store, which was the hardest, right, to figure out, and that was like the biggest leap to replicate this thing. Frankly, I was driving the hardest way to get there. So it seemed far, and as the crow flies, it really wasn't that far, but it kind of was the deal where nobody would commute between these 2 close towns. But in hindsight, they were way too close together, and one store should have served both markets. Eventually, it kind of capitalized the smaller location, and we consolidated them. But then we actually started to go to that style setup for each additional placement, and we picked like either the best city or the best 2 cities in the state that were more catered to our needs, rather than keeping them all in local proximity. The one thing to keep in mind was, for a distribution perspective, is it was like easy routes. So we were up and down 95. Easy to get to. So like we could dispatch a truck and it would run a milk route there and back and fulfill all of the stores. So that was one thing we did keep in mind when building them out, to be easy to service.
Logistics, right? So when you said, okay, I'm gonna go now, I'm gonna go choose a model for the store, because you could have went bigger on one store, but that doesn't necessarily translate into more sales.
Yep.
um how do you determine the size of a store? And I know we're getting off track from real estate, but this is real estate, to be honest with you. So
It's all the same, man. It's all the
right,
same. And a lot of it had to do with the real estate. So what we needed to find was what was a market where the consumer would respond well, where there was a need for the product and service, and where was it affordable for us, right? As a startup, I mean, this was privately funded, and we
right.
didn't have an unlimited checkbook, right? So humble beginnings, and think about how you bootstrap your first couple rentals, is just that. It's like, what can I afford and do? So that's how we treated it. It was like, where can we go? Like, what big box store went out of business? Which, right, anchor store was no longer there, or who could we piggyback off of that was close in proximity to our clientele, and we'd get as close as we could and what we could afford from a real estate perspective. Because right, we needed to buy that credibility into the new market. We were new guys, so we had to look good. We had to be close. We couldn't be a destination. Nobody would travel to us. We had to be like right in the mix of things.
Good deal. So now, fast forward, you run into this first multifamily. Were you just a passive investor there, or how did that happen?
I actually came on as an operational consultant for the project, and we were also doing some other fix and flip and direct to seller stuff at the time. So I got really, as a bystander, a look into systematizing some of the back end operations on the development of the project. It was 160 some units, ground up construction. Was pretty cool. And a buddy of mine was the developer, and it was their first project as well. So they were partners on a project. And it was just really neat to go through that journey and to see what that looked like. And then all while we were still building out this direct to seller side of marketing, and doing a lot of residential fix and flips during that time
How do
too.
you get into the whole fix and flip game? Or do you become a landlord first?
Oh man, I think everybody's journey is unique. I owned one property, I think,
Right.
before, started getting into the more active investing. So and fast forward 7 years later, it's what I preach to any community is like, cash flow is king to get going. And I don't ever want to deter people, and I don't think it's a bad strategy to buy passive investments. But if you're going to get into the investing space, I think as much liquidity and cash flow that you can generate is essential. Then when you start to wealth plan and look further ahead, that's when you can start to allocate towards rentals. It's really tough to have a bad month, own a rental, and hope that $200 cash on cash return is going to save you, and then all of a sudden you're liquidating properties to generate enough cash for payroll and to survive. So I've always been a big proponent of like stimulate that cash flow. Once you have enough of that, then start deploying that from a taxation benefit to start buying rentals.
Do you think rentals are active or passive income?
I don't think that there's any such thing in real estate as passive, man.
I agree.
I'm the world's worst landlord, and I try to be passive. But no, I think it is not intensive as doing the day to day, investment style stuff. We jumped on the podcast. You were negotiating a deal and trying to get to closing, so I don't think it requires as much hands on as that, but. It definitely, there's no day that you don't go by to check a balance to make sure somebody paid, that nothing's broken. It's always there. So I don't think you can call that passive.
Yeah. When I first started in real estate, I was a W-2 guy. So I made good money. I had good income. Um, I was very bankable. I had money saved and all that. And I saw somebody that said, I own 100 rentals. Each one of my rentals gives me like $300 a month. This is in 2008. And, my passive income is like 30 to 40,000. And I said, wait a minute. This guy is making double the amount of money I'm making right now. I was making good money at the time. If I can do that, I'm going to replace my income and I'm going to have all these properties. Well, 4 years later, man, I got to 107 properties, bought all with hard money. And, at the time, DSCR did not even exist. They had these things called blanket loans. And we would put them on blanket loans where that was nothing more than private money, but it was like a pool of money together and it was a higher interest. Anyhow, I hated it. Like, I was like, what? what vision did I buy? It wasn't even my vision. I was like, I had half of the properties were vacant, or they weren't paying for some reason. You're right. The $200 or $300 cash flow is like nothing compared to the mortgage when you got one, right? So I became a motivated seller really fast, and
Yeah.
I started
Yeah.
getting rid of liquidate, like everything you just said before. I'm mentioning this. I went through it, so I liquidated all my rentals. I didn't really want it to be a landlord anymore. Although I think you have to be a landlord just for tax purposes.
Yeah.
Because you can offset a lot of it by being a landlord. But I don't. My dream of having hundreds of thousands of houses and stuff like that went out the window right away. I said I'd
Yeah.
rather do a bunch of transactions, make bigger checks, and maybe have some houses paid for or whatever. That if they're vacant, they're not hurting you.
Correct.
So, all right. So you get into this fix and flips and into the multifamily kind of like at the same time, right? So, at what point do you say I'm gonna go this route? Like what was the next step for you?
Yeah, great question. At the time, it's right in the same vein of things, and it was like I leaned into the active cash flow, which was on the transactional side, and that may be a reverse journey for some people because I think you go single family, multifamily, and then right into the development side of things. But I kind of came back and stayed to those roots where it was like, hey, let's double down and work on the single family side of things. So in York, I went and worked as COO for Eric Brewer to learn more about the industry. And right now, it's 6 months, 8 months into this game, and I had a lot of learning to do before I quote unquote understood the market. So I joined Eric's team as COO and ran that project for 3 years after that, and helped
So
build.
you were the integrator.
Yeah. Yep, I was in the trenches doing the work, and that's the best way to learn it. We had a team of probably about 40 people at the time, and we were growing and systematizing, scaling, implemented Salesforce, started to build out our tech department and really refine all of that stuff. I mean, Eric obviously had a great business there, but again, applying my specialty and skill set was like, hey man, let's start taking that wisdom and tribal knowledge that doesn't get done unless you do it, and let's start plugging that into some hardware and some software and maximize this. So that project took a while. I mean, it was a grueling couple of years, and none of that comes easy. And I think everybody's version of scale is different, but scale at the time for us was to try to pound a bunch of extra deals and really capitalize on more market share. And that was change can be hard. We had a lot of attrition. I think my first week there, he handed me the keys and he put a lot of belief in me. But I think I lost 5 of our 7 leadership positions in the first week just due to either challenging and casting the vision of where we wanted to go, people not being eye to eye, uncovering that people weren't pulling their weight and or qualified. And that was like, oh man, what did I just get myself into here? And it was a long journey for a couple of years that we pushed real hard to improve that organization, even beyond what he was able to build in the previous 15 years.
Especially when you come in with a new vision, right? And new systems and processes. Now they're uncomfortable because okay, now we got this guy that is telling us to do everything different.
Yeah.
And I don't want to listen to him. He probably doesn't even have the experience. They question everything, and next thing you know, they end up quitting. And I completely I can see why that happened, because this happened to me as well.
Yeah.
Every time I make changes, I make them very uncomfortable, right? So and I'm one thing that I am good at is I am good at constant change. So
Don't get comfortable.
no, don't get comfortable because so right now I have 2 managers that are comfortable. And today I had a conversation with my 3 other managers that are very uncomfortable. And I said, guys, we're about to make some changes here on Monday. And I was going to call you and say, hey, Benmont, can we do this next week? Because I'm going to take a flight today to South America. That's where my call center is.
Yeah.
But then I figured I'd rather travel tomorrow. So that's why I didn't call you and move the call. but we're going to actually make some new changes. And those guys are going to be uncomfortable in their new situations, right? And what happens after that, that's going to be up to them. But if you get comfortable in a position, that it's time for a change, because you're not growing anymore, right? It's how do you grow more? How do you keep the growth? And I believe that in business, if your business is not growing, it's dying. It's
100%.
just, that's just the way it is. And sometimes you have to go through a death period, which is when you lose people, right? And so you can rearrange everything to kick it back up. Can you tell me, from an integrator perspective? I know you're a visionary as well now, because now you have your own, but we'll get to that in a minute. From a visionary from an integrator perspective, what sort of systems and processes do you implement so you can, number one, fix the culture, especially when you're new, right? Or install a new culture, because not necessarily the culture is broken, but maybe you have to install a new one. It's like an upgrade of the software, right? Like right now, we're getting the Mac users are getting a software upgrade, right? And so
Love the analogy.
it's the same. It's a software upgrade, right? So,
Yep.
So from your point of view, what are the things that as an integrator you implement in order to do these upgrades?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and respectful for anybody who wants to sit in that integrator seat. But it's exactly, I actually just wrote the framework for a TEDx talk at a local chapter on running an outdated operating system, which is you as a person, frankly. And it's exactly that, because it's like everyone dreads. I saw a post the other day where it was like, whoever designed the new mail app on the iOS update, right, is a criminal.
I
And
saw
it's
that.
like,
I saw that same post.
and what that is change, right? And it's all in change management of how that is perceived, because a pizza party isn't culture, and complacency, as you mentioned, kills. So how do you find this common ground of, even if something's not broken, that we continue to improve it? How do we all cast a vision on being bigger, better, more efficient, whatever that version is? And it's through change management. The only time, and most of the times, when people view that as uncomfortable is due to a lack of clarity. And when we were last at Family Mastermind, my theme for this year was to take 8K clarity in terms of definition, and don't let it hit the user at standard definition and outdated technology. It's like, we need to cascade 8K clarity all the way down to the people to get them to buy in, to be really supportive of these initiatives. So oftentimes systems processes, they get overcomplicated. We start to think, oh, we need all of these softwares to build process maps and such out, and you don't. It's just, how do we create and cultivate a vision that everybody understands what we're working towards, and then how do we buy everybody in and get them on board to do that? So it's as simple, and starts with just like, where are we headed, and get people to weigh in before you ask them to buy in, is what we always say inside our organization. The details of writing down process maps and recording looms, right? Like, that's easy. That stuff comes and goes every day. They get outdated and updated, but it's all about the people. How do you harness and maximize the power of the people to get to where you want to go?
I love that. How do you weigh in before you buy in, right?
Yeah.
Now, during that do you operate on the Vision Traction Organizer at all, or is there another tool that you use?
Yeah. So, we started and built the organization with EOS.
Yeah.
I'll say influence. As we progressed, we went through scaling up, which is another platform, for scale. We went through a couple different practitioners, frameworks. A huge proponent of Gary Harper's RISE framework. And why I like that is, each one of those frameworks was great for a phase in business, but not many of them look at the collective journey of building a business. So EOS is great from startup to, hey, I'm making some money and I have a business. Scaling up is only good if you want to go from stage 4 to 5 and prepare for an exit. But not many of them gave you this linear journey to get consistent improvement. And the really unique thing there is, like, the law of the lid kicks into play, where like your leadership will limit the level of business that you're in as well. So when we were talking about change in people, unfortunately, like, as we wanted to grow the business, we needed better people. right? And then you play this game back and forth. So we kind of spun off, I would say, a iteration of our own style operating system, what worked best for our organization, with influence from multiple that we constantly revise and work on to become the most efficient still to this day.
It's what I call you built your own Frankenstein.
Yep, exactly.
I
So
love
we
that.
we took pieces and we went to build a bear, and we came out with a biz ops system out of there. So
Good. Now, is that something you guys teach? Because I know you have aside from your real estate business, which we're going to talk about today in a minute, you also have an education business, correct?
yeah. Yeah, my passion has shifted a lot outside of transactions. I love them. It's good money. But from a people perspective, opportunities like this of B2B, of collaborating and impacting people, I have shifted the majority of my focus into, we'll just say, the coaching, teaching, education space. And our core focus there, I'm a huge believer that sales, as much as I'm a non-sales guy, the level of respect I have for high-performing sales is key. So sales is how you win in this game of investing. I could almost tell you that you could vendor and leverage out everything else in your business if you're a good closer, that you can succeed in this market. And a good closer is not a greasy car salesman. It is a consistent, repeatable sales process. So our chief learning officer, Joe, and myself and Eric spent time refining what we did over these 5 to 7 years, and completely build a highlight reel of a sales process and a sales system. And that is now what we teach to implement. And 2025 is the year of respect for ops and sales. Usually it's oil and water, but the closer you can get those two departments to run in conjunction, ultimately is how you will gain light speed, traction, and successful sales. And at that point, it's just like, where do you want to go? And all you have to do is be better. And then that changes your perspective on which market, which marketing channel, who do I compete with, who's here. Doesn't matter if you believe, that you are truly a well-oiled machine, and that you'll outsell anybody.
I completely agree, man. I tell my guys all the time, it's like, look, if your pipeline is full, and you may have operational challenges here on the other side where you're having maybe clients drop off or whatever, for whatever reason, as long as that pipeline is full, hey, you can still replenish, what's gone, right? You want to keep what's leaving, but at the same time, you still need a pipeline of new business coming in. And it's like I said in this analogy, which is new people cure all problems, right? I'm pretty sure you've heard this before, and I couldn't agree more with the sales process. You're right. You can pretty much vendor or get sponsors for a bunch of things if you're a good closer. Which takes me to the real estate side. Now, let's talk about your operation, how you started and where it is today.
Yeah, so right, the launch pad of that was to earn my stripes and graces over those couple of years of being, our COO or integrator. And then we said, hey man, like, let's go take this elsewhere now. So when we launched our first market expansion, we went into 8 additional counties in Pennsylvania, and set out to build, a decent business, and bootstrapping it. And I'm talking, we didn't have any credibility, influence in the market. I had this belief in pro forma and model, and wanted to take kind of this system that we built at the hub and start to serve other areas. And the really cool thing was we were able to do, I think, like 65 deals the first year and just shy of 100 our second year in business, which, starts to be a respectable startup style operation.
Yeah, for the first year, those are good numbers.
Yeah. So that was a great proof of concept.
Actually, I know people that will die today, Benmont, that's got a lot of experience to be able to do 65 deals in a year, because, the market has done a bunch of weird things, but 65 deals is very respectable for the first year.
Yeah, and the cool thing is we allocated, and right, everybody, when you start, I wouldn't say you don't need to do 65 deals the first year, and you may not have the capital to do it, but we only spent like 150 grand to start this up, and we didn't even utilize all of the operating capital. So point being there is like, okay, cool, scale it down and say we want to do 30 do I have 20, 30 grand to start this thing up? And you can even do it for cheaper than that. So from a cost perspective, we were able to build a couple $1 million business going into year 3 now. Return on investment was 60 days. I gave away some equity for startup capital. In hindsight, it was like I needed a 60-day loan, but that turned into a phenomenal relationship and is great. However,
now, hold on a second. Let me pull you back on that one, because I like what you're saying, because some people say, I just don't have the money to get going, or I don't have the money to start the business or to keep the business afloat, right? Because, okay, let's face it, you're putting money into marketing.
yeah,
You're also putting money into your people that you have, as W-2s or however you pay them,
yeah,
but you still need capital for that. And
yeah,
then you're locking up deals that may not close for another 45 to even 90 days sometimes, right?
yeah.
Okay, you still got those 2-week closings or whatever, but in today's world, that's probably about the best you can do, is to close in a couple of weeks.
Yep.
Eventually, you're going to be dry without money. And you have to get creative on, hey, hold on a second, and this happens to everybody. I don't know I don't care what level. It could be the little guy that's just getting started, trying to get his first deal, like the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar business that just had a major shift and now they don't have a cash flow for some reason, right? And I used to run a $120 million business, a year business, so we found ourselves in situations like that from time to time, where we needed 10 to 20 million and we didn't have it. We didn't even have half of it, right?
Yeah.
So you mentioned you got some maybe an investor or a loan or something along those lines. You gave up some equity, which I don't suggest people do. I rather say, hey, go borrow the money. Don't give up equity.
As would I.
But how did you like, okay, hey, how was that particular situation where you said, you know what, man, I'm willing to give equity right now so I can keep this afloat?
Yeah, that was investing into a relationship. We actually said, hey, in a couple years, we want this to be bigger than it is today. And at no point in time, and I think this comes back to, me as a person or whomever's in the seat of like, that wasn't my end all be all, right? It wasn't to prove and say, oh, I did this many deals on my own or not.
Right.
It was awesome to provide opportunity for people, to create a business that I don't have to be in every single day now, that has great income and great returns. So that collectively was a decision I made, investing into relationships and people to give up some of that equity so that I could continue to go in to build other things. Like I'm simultaneously launching a new business and still able to develop and do other things at the same time, which wouldn't exist without some of those strategic relationships. So to your point, I wouldn't always encourage people to give up equity immediately. And anybody that asks that or of themselves and they don't believe in themselves or do it, it's everyone out there has a complementary skill to something that you hate, that you're not good at. You just have to know, what you're great at. Like I was phenomenal at operations. I needed to go find a sales guy and then I needed some cash to do it. So it was like, okay, cool. Those are my 3 stops. And those people inherently, right? Somebody that's great at finance is not phenomenal at sales, and somebody who's great at sales is generally not good at finance and ops. So there's always somebody who loves and wants to do exactly what you're struggling with and you don't want to do. Right? We just took the time to find those people and assemble, like you said earlier, the blocks to build what we wanted.
Absolutely. So, that's a perfect example of not letting maybe the cash that you needed at the time to hire these new people and to integrate and to make a better team, because that's what you were essentially building at the time.
Yeah.
You just went and found strategic partnerships. They funded those positions. The cash you had, you probably put it on whatever the business needed at the time.
Yeah.
So it didn't take away from that. You added, of course, you gave up some equity, but that's just a different conversation, right? Different negotiation. So
Yeah.
all right. So how big is your business? Is your real estate business today?
Yeah. So currently, we still have partners in the majority of them. I love doing things together. But, we have the core market of Eric's business is still running. I think we did cumulatively just about 400 deals or just over last year. was where we landed. So we'll continue to grow.
Are
And
you
to
guys
scale that aspect of
nationwide
things.
or local?
Dude, the crazy thing here, and this is like a podcast episode in its own, is we are in central Pennsylvania, the most unassuming, unappealing market that is smaller than 90% of where your listeners live today. Our total service area is MSA, as they refer to it, is less than 2 million people in that core market. And when we expanded and did this other business, it was similar size. So now we do serve a large area that is about 4 million people. But in retrospect, right? I mean, you look at it in Atlanta, you look at some of the Florida cities. I mean, Tampa's 5 million people, and we drive, we cover 18 counties in person. We are boots on the ground in your living room service business. So I think proof just goes to show being efficient, and being committed to a market, you can really kind of do it anywhere. So if you're sitting at home and you're stuck and you don't think you're in the right area, like you don't need the allure of a Phoenix, of an LA to be successful. Like Google York, Pennsylvania. It's like I pass a horse and buggy on my way to work. And
I can see why you're successful, Benmont. So in 2016, 17, I was probably arguably one of the biggest investors in the Houston area. Okay. I was doing about 47 rehabs at a time. Now I was lead generating, buying these properties. I had all private money lined up for them. And I had almost 70 employees working on these properties. They were all like workers, doing the sheetrock, the painting, and all of that. And guess what markets I focused on? The little ones. I didn't focus on the big city.
Yeah.
And the reason why is I was the only guy fishing there.
Yep.
So I was buying cheaper. I was getting better deals because I was the only guy knocking on that door.
Mhm.
And I had so many deals on my hands that, I always say, if you have a good deal in your hands, money will show up.
Anything. You can fix everything. You can fix any seller problem, any title problem. You can fix anything with the right deal. When you're in control of that inventory, that you're the master right there.
And you just confirm what I said, because sometimes when I go to RIAs, and I speak regularly at RIAs now, although I haven't. Last year I didn't do much, but this year I'm getting more involved again. I asked this question. I said, who is willing to drive an hour for a $40,000 check? And you see everybody raises their hand. Me. And I said, all right, who's doing fix and flips from the ones that raise their hands? All right. And then kind of like almost all of them, they keep their hands up. I show them the properties I have at the moment. I got this property available, all 70% minus repairs. How many of you are going to buy those? And you can see those hands dropping.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, why? I don't get it. Like, why does it have to be in the most desirable neighborhood of the large city? Like, I don't get it. Like, I guess they read that in Rich Dad Poor Dad or something like that, where Robert Kiyosaki says, buy a house 4 streets away from yours. We'll try that in Katy, Texas. It's almost impossible, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not surprised that you're doing 400 deals in an area like that, because it's the same type of area that I was focused on.
Yep.
And that's the key. Like, so how do you guys manage the lead generation? Are you doing cold calling? Are you doing texting, or is PPC? How do you handle that?
Everything. I'm a huge proponent, and this is really, in my wheelhouse of passion is building out a refined marketing system. Is like, we sprint when we do anything to get to a 3-legged stool of marketing, right? The worst thing you want to be doing is on a pogo stick, and if something happens and somebody can sweep the leg out, you're done. So immediately we get to a 3-legged stool, and then we continue to add stools to that leg in case something happens. Right. Example, this past year, we went battleground state, election, interest rates, seasonality. I couldn't buy a TV commercial, right? Direct mail is filled with political stuff. Every text message and call, all of a sudden you start chipping away at stuff that's bringing in tons of money every month for us. So then it's like, even we lost probably 4 effective channels and had to pivot. I currently deploy money into we call lead categories. So texting is one, calling is one, in 11 different lead categories on a consistent basis where I'm spending money to have well insulated. And some of those are great. And if you talk to other people, they'd say, hey, knucklehead, and we like, why are you spending money there? Because not everything's going to be a 7-1 and a 5-1,
Of
right?
course.
So then it's like, cool, who goes to the casino and plays blackjack? Tons of people. What's that? 2-1. So if I'm out of 7-1s and 5-1s, I will continue to try to optimize and insulate them, but I'm going to start adding 2-1s. I'm going to start playing blackjacks. And right then you say, hey, is this good for our business? Do we have the infrastructure? All of those kind of things. Like, do we want to deal with cold calling and texting? And if the answer is yes, and we can make money, cool, add it in. If the team collectively says, no, we don't want to deal with that, or it's not right now, or we don't have the infrastructure, then we don't. But we're well insulated when it comes to marketing. And constantly we make very objective database decisions. I hate running a business emotionally. I think it's a dangerous place to be.
Right. And do you do billboards as well? And
We do. So, I mean, we've got TV, radio, billboard campaigns, direct mail, calling, texting, PPC,
yeah, you're
SEO.
omnipresent. That's what I call being omnipresent.
Yeah, we try, and it's hard to track. Honestly, it gets complex. It's kind of annoying, but you do the best job you can, and you run with it.
Your cost per acquisition is higher, right, than normal, because you're targeting the same area with multiple guns, basically. You have PPC going out, you have texting, cold calling, then you have the billboards and the TV and the radio, but you're probably doing radio as well. So, and letters, right? So you're running 6 to what? How many marketing channels do you think you're running right now?
We're in 11 paid different channels that we track.
11 paid different channels. So, what can we talk about some KPIs when it comes to ad spend versus
Sure.
revenue? What do you think your cost per contract is today?
Yeah, so we're around $3,600 cost per contract.
That's still not bad.
Nah, and again, you take into consideration the market that we're in, right? We're not in a major metro, and I love that you asked cost per contract because you mentioned one thing before that of like either repetitive or duplicative marketing. And originally, our team would panic. We would get a PPL lead, a PPC lead, and a TV call, and they'd be like, "Oh, duplicate in Salesforce." And they'd be like, hey man, we're buying this 2 or 3 times. I'd say, A, motivation is high. And B, who cares? Like, okay, so we spent $800 on the cost per lead, but like at the end of the day, I would rather less leads, higher motivated people, and pay a premium for them not generating a ton of leads. I step inside of and coach so many organizations where their lead flow requirements are 2 to 10 times higher than mine a month or annually. And it just blows my mind where it's like, I would rather pay a premium to be in front of the right person and get to cost per contract and profit. I don't care about everything else, right? The rest could be vanity. Like, who cares how much a lead costs? If it doesn't convert, what do you want? You lost a bunch of $80? Like, I would rather pay 500 and have them convert 80% of the time all day long.
Right. 100%. So that's why I went straight for the contract, because I'm like, okay. And then you don't close all the contracts, although I'm pretty sure you guys are doing a good job because you're so laser focused in the areas that you're targeting that your drop off rate is pretty low. I would think.
We're less than 20%, and I would say 15% of that is not in our control.
Title issues. Yeah.
And then the 5% are hard decisions that we make. We generally lean pretty hard with doing what we said we're going to do. And we've lost money on deals. Our core values in our organization, we always describe them as things like, will we lose money to uphold this? And we have. When we bought houses and lost them. I mean, we lost not too long ago, we lost 60 grand on a deal that we kept our word and helped an 83-year-old woman who thought she was going to close, and things got sideways at the end and a buyer backed out. And I ended up buying the property. It depreciated in a busier market quick, and it just is what it is. So we try to control that as much as we can. If you find you've got tons of fall off, take a look in the mirror and say, are you doing everything you can to help these people or not? But some of that's just part of the business that you can't fix always.
I haven't met the first real estate investor that hasn't lost money in real estate. Okay. I lost count on how many deals I lost money on because the market shifted on me or whatever, whatever happened. Right. So I was doing 50 rehabs at one time and Hurricane Harvey came to town. Like,
Yeah, that's not good.
how do you handle that? Like, like
Insurance and start over, baby.
not even that, man. It's because it wasn't an insurance problem. It wasn't because the houses were destroyed. It's because my workforce left.
Yeah.
So how do I rehire all these people? And $250,000 in interest payments a month,
Accruing. Yeah.
and now next thing you know, a year later, that's 2.5 million. That hurts anybody. And then not only that, by the time you go back on the market, because now you're finishing properties, they're not worth the same.
Yeah, the market suffered. The whole dynamic has shifted. Yeah, it's wild. I mean,
Everything shifted.
in Tampa here, we're post hurricane season, and it's still a mess down here. The market's the Wild West. So, yeah, it's never a sure bet. That's for sure. Don't get into this space thinking it's easy, and or that you're not going to lose money at some point.
You will lose money at some point, and you just gotta find a way to push through, and that's it. Okay, but you got systems and processes that at the end of the day, you will come out on top as long as you keep, implementing and you keep doing the changes that you have to do, and you got checks and balances, right? Like who's doing what they're supposed to be doing? Are we following the SOPs? Are we standard operating procedures? For those of you that don't understand acronyms, Benmont and I can see why we speak the same language. Now, at what point do you say, okay, I'm going to become an educator now, or what got you into wanting to show people maybe how to better their operations or how to learn what you do?
Yeah, I think I have no superpower, and I just know, and I'm confident in what I was blessed and able to learn through doing this. That most people focus on sales, on more, just spending their way out of it, and doing all of these things. And I think going through that journey of always systematizing something, like, it is a great feeling, and I love celebrating that with people when, like, business is stable. We call it porpoising, like jumping in and out of the water. Like when you're hero to broke month to month, like that sucks. I don't care if you make $250,000 one month, it sucks to lose 60 the next. So the best place that I found for a cultural perspective, and even for me to be at an enjoyable workplace, was when we were stable, when we could forecast revenue. Like I can click 3 months out and I see we have pending revenue. That's amazing. That feels good. Right? Like it's awesome to know that by the 15th of this month, we should be at 50% of our revenue goal for next month. So it's like, right, when you get in that routine, I always use the analogy, it's way easier to keep up than it is catch up, right? If you're running and you're looking at the tail end of somebody a quarter mile away, that's a long journey to catch up and is almost impossible, right? You might be tired, but just keep running with them. So, right, like if you can keep up with this and keep up with your goals and keep up with your projects and your objectives, and you don't have to make these emotional and rash decisions to sell something quick to try to cover payroll. It creates a completely different work environment. And frankly, that's when work got fun. And now I love that aspect of things to the point where I want other business owners to enjoy that. It truly pains me to see people who do a lot of deals or spend a lot of money and it's not efficient, or they're not making money. And it's like, man, that's great. The whole dream was to get out of the W-2 space, was to be an entrepreneur. And you're so close that if you just got somebody a little nerdier in there to clean some stuff up and get some of your stuff on autopilot, that it could really help. So that was a true passionate piece for me. And I want to continue to share that journey. And we've recently launched a product where we go into businesses for 2 days and we do this super deep dive of this pragmatic breakdown and rebuild an economic funnel and how you're going to get to your goals and create realistic outcomes. I sat through way too many planning sessions where they're like, what do you want revenue to be this year? And we'd say about 5 million. Okay, everybody writes down 5 million. And then it's like, okay, cool. Divide that by last year's deal volume. Okay, cool. This is how many we need to do. And it's like, well, how the hell are we going to get there? Like, you guys are just pulling numbers out of the air. So like we build, and then all you have to do is execute. And if you break that down to day by day, like it's much easier to look at today to say, hey man, if I go on 2 appointments today and 2 tomorrow, I should have a deal by the end of the day, Friday. Cool. Check. Easy. Like I'm left foot, right foot. And for the smaller, newer investor, it's so easy to get overwhelmed. But if you can kind of guide them and show them the ropes to just win each day one at a time and put together those, right, in Jim Collins terms, 20-mile march, where every day you march 20 miles regardless of the weather. That's it. You don't have to go 100 miles one day and don't quit and go 10 the next. It's just like build that system that keeps you going, and then winning odds are on your side. If you do enough of the right behaviors, like all that's left is the results that we planned for. And that's really meaningful for me at this point in my career.
Now, when you was it that people started hitting you up, so like, hey man, can you show me the ropes, or can you teach me, or can you guide me? That because sometimes that's what happened to me. But that's how this podcast started, by the way. I started having people showing up in my office, knocking on my door. I will open the door and I say, how can I help you? And they're like, I'm looking for Mr. Ricardo. And I'm like, Ricardo, what can I do for you? Oh, I was told that you flip a lot of houses, and I was told to show up and that you will show me how to do this. And I'm like,
Okay, get your checkbook out.
I mean, I guess I can. Well, at the time, I was completely uh, alien to masterminds, to coaching, to any of that. I was literally like laser focused on my business. We were buying and selling a bunch of properties, but I was not part of any communities, it was a huge mistake, by the way.
Yeah.
And I didn't know I could charge for coaching, but what I would do is I would invite these people into the office for like an hour or so. I would show them everything we were doing. And by the time they left 2 hours later, one night, my business partner, Dennis, comes in and says, hey man, I don't want any more of these meetings, dude, because people show up here at 6 and it's 8:30 and we're still talking and we still got work to do. And you're just, wasting our time. But at the time I was kind of like, hey man, I'm just helping this person out. Nobody helped me coming through the ranks.
Yeah.
I want to be a lending hand. But he's the one that suggested, hey, let's start a YouTube channel and a podcast and just let's talk real estate, put it up in the air. And when people come to pick your brains, send them over there. And that's how it all started, right? So for me, it was kind of like on demand. Like I never even thought about being an educator to begin with. Did you see any of those signs coming over to you?
Yeah, I think that naturally happens to everybody. And I think as you're talking through it, right, it's deja vu. Inside of Collective Genius, like I joined the mastermind community. It was my first one, the first year I was in business. And right, I was like, oh, I'm going to do all of this stuff. And I was on every call, showed up everywhere, which was amazing. I hope I had a great impact. And at the end of the year, a gentleman passed away that was part of that community who was like the ambassador of CG. And they awarded me with the Tim Goff Servant's Heart Award for being like the most impactful person, that for no reason, right? It was just being a good human. And that was like the switch in my head where I was like, okay, cool. Like, because I never had any experience really helping or coaching either. And I was like, okay, I like that. That makes me feel good, right? So A, that's one, is you do something you love. And then two was kind of like your journey where it was like, hey man, I got 2 little kids and you got to live and pay bills. You can't run around doing charitable work all day, unfortunately. But right, again, coming back to like systematizing and operationalizing things, just like you did. You said, okay, cool. There's a need for something. Let's build a platform. Let's give. And then, right, that's cool. And we enjoy it. Like we're sitting here today. So over time, we started to refine and then develop that. And we started to fill voids in the industry where our unique abilities and skill sets were. And the cool thing was we didn't really have to, like you didn't either. It wasn't your core business. So we had kind of like recklessly wandered around for 2 years as we developed and kind of stabilized and firmed up some of these ideas. And we still do that because it's still like, what do people need? The market changes so often that we still look at it that way. But eventually it was just like, okay, cool. Like as long as people are willing to pay, because I think free is never good. Right? People don't respect either your
No, they don't
time
respect the time.
or they don't pay attention because they're not invested into it. And the worst thing is for you to waste your time, you to waste my time, and neither one of us to win. And I don't want anybody to pay me and not utilize, what they do as well. So it's like, it has to be win-win. And the best way to do that is a fair exchange. And I'll give you that roadmap and that tribal knowledge as you will as well. So then it's a good outcome for everybody, right? And then that's repeatable.
What's your ideal client for your coaching services? Like how does that person look like?
So the interesting thing here is I build a community. We studied and we learned a lot, and there's 2 ways to win: is you're either cheaper or you're different. And cheap wasn't a great model to go and scale. And we had to build something different. So I actually have focused the majority of our energy on building a community for salespeople. And when I say salespeople and community, it's not show up and consume information. I view that like as YouTube University. It's almost education. So without application, learning something is frankly a form of entertainment, and that's all that it is. So what we did was we built a community where the doers show up to the calls. They appreciate it. It helps them and it transforms businesses. I frankly don't want a bunch of reckless CEOs and owners of businesses in there because they're not suited for it. They don't want to be on there. So our community is for the people doing this work in a sales position. And it's like they want to learn and get better. I just met a girl in Sarasota who flew in from Jamaica for her first time in the US, makes a reasonable wage in Jamaica for working here. And she chose her first trip to come to a mastermind where we all were because she knew people in the community. And it was like, damn, that is cool, right? Like nobody else in here making $1 million a year cares that I showed up or cares that anybody else showed up. She had a purpose and a reason to be there. And a lot of people don't focus on the doers of that. So our ideal client is anyone. It could be a super seasoned person that just wants that community and to refine their skills, or to learn best trades in the industry on what a sales process could or should look like. And it's also, we build it so it's cost effective for somebody who wants to get into it. Because I'm telling you, as I said in the beginning, sales is how you win. Like you don't have any problems till you have lead problem, and then you don't have any more problems until you can't convert enough of them. So if you focus there, I almost could help you assure that you'll have a successful start. So it's a pretty wide spectrum, but it's people who literally have to show up and contribute. It is not listen and consume content. We role play every group call. We have homework, right? We have a community where we have silly contests and win prizes. I shipped out iPads and gift cards for Christmas to people. And it's a community where we make an impact on each other every day. And it reaches a little bit different audience, but it's people who want that, not just to watch a video or not just to be told what to do and think that that's best. It drove me nuts to have our sales guys spend tons of money on training. I'd hit them in the hallway with 2 objections and they'd be stumped after hours and hours and hours and weeks and months of traveling around in seminars because they just sit there and they just consumed content. They never put it into application. And right, your neuroelasticity and all of these things that you have to constantly work on is what is required to get better. And my pursuit is in making people better, and that's what that community is all about.
What about COOs and CEOs and those kind of people that are not necessarily making the calls? Now they're running those guys that are making the calls, right? The sales, most of the sales reps. Do you guys do training for that as well, or is that in like that what you mentioned before, the 2-day deep dive into their business?
Yeah, so the group, we really like to preserve the integrity. So I may kick out a CEO if he's on there and not bringing great value. Now, if you're an active salesperson or you have great sales experience and you want to make an impact on that community on a level playing field, bring it, and you're more than welcome, and we have that. Outside of that, that's what that one-on-one coaching engagement looks like, or those on-sites where we can really help restructure the strategy and cast the vision. So we do offer all of that. There's just a time and a place for each one of them. And that's how we kind of build out our different value propositions, to just suit people's needs.
I love it, man. You got a little bit for everybody. So, but what I like the most is that you're showing people how to be a better salesperson, which is what we need today. Like, I think that's the major challenge I've seen people, go through, is that they think is about the numbers. No, it's about how do you discover what the real needs of that client is, or the seller, right? Like, or in our case, it's a seller or a buyer, right?
Yeah.
If you tell me you're buying multifamily units from 300 doors and up, and you want them pink, I'm not gonna show up with 36 units black. No, because I'm not solving your problem.
Correct.
Right. And a lot of that's what a sales process is how do you peel the onion and uncover what really needs to be done. Man, I love this podcast, Benmont. I can see why you're so successful. I wish you nothing but success. How can people get in contact with you?
Yeah, great question. And I had a blast being on today and chatting with you. It was a lot of fun. It's always good to reflect on your challenges and struggles along the way, which there's plenty of. But yeah, I would just say ramp, RAMPREI.com is our website that kind of has that stuff. And the cool thing there is I would strongly encourage it is we have a 7-day free trial to our community. So jam yourself in there for free. And you can come hang out and jump on some calls. No harm, no foul. One click unsubscribe, and you won't be charged anything. So if you want to just come say hi, tell us you heard the podcast, check out a training call or a sales call or a sales leadership call, come do it. Come hang out. We love that. We encourage it. You can DM us while you're in there or reach out to us, from that website. And we would love to connect with anybody. For any, business owners out there, remember my tip is always, man, when it comes to sales, again, like that's how we will win. Lead management, I think, is an overlooked sector. Hire the best possible people you can, right? For lead management, you've got a well-refined sales machine. It is not an admin position. Don't overlook, right? The people. Keller Williams calls them your director of first impressions, right? If you're buying $500, $700 leads, that person who answers the phone the first time is the one who sets the tone of your culture, the trust in your organization, and is the gatekeeper at any future revenue. So from that point forward, anybody that touches deals, that can help convert deals and make you more money, we always do things in deal math, man. If it costs less to join our community than just one deal a year for your entire team. So if there's value in that, reach out to us. We would love to help and connect and support you in any way as well. So look forward to seeing, hopefully people enjoyed hearing us chat today.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for being here today, guys. And don't forget to hit share, like, and subscribe. March 14th and 15th, we have a 10 growth in Houston, Texas. You definitely need to be there. Go grab your tickets. VIP sold out. We only have general admission now. So I'll see you on the next one. Thank you so much, Benmont. You have a great day.
Thanks, Ricardo. See you, buddy.